It's the state of the dungeon. It's a video that Rob does about his games. Yeah! Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Rob here in the lair of OmnusI to do my State of the Dungeon address. This is for the game that took place on the 14th of January, 2021. Yay, we're in 2021. Yay! Anyhow. This is going to be a two-parter because apparently I've lost the footage of the video I swear I shot for the game that took place on the 17th of December. I swear I did it. I can't find it. So to bring you up to where we started on the 15th of January, the group had saved Mohammed Asin, a gifted in Iraq, from being attacked by somebody in a jet plane. And when we opened, Rook was not able to make that prior session, so he showed up on a camel. Well, yeah, that's how we interjected him. The party game went back, took a look at the vehicle, which was shrapnelated from the explosions from jet fighter-propelled missiles. And it was still drivable, however, so they were able to, they shoot off the camel, and they drove to the town of Tikrit, which is the hometown of Muhammad, and they bought some basic necessities they needed at what is essentially a convenience store, taking care of the needs of the small community. So they bought first aid kits, they bought enough food and stuff to get them going. The drive to Mahet, which is another city, on the way back to Baghdad, was not very comfortable because no air conditioning, not much for windows anymore. Sentinel was riding in the trunk. Wasn't the most comfortable, admittedly. But they ended up, Adam got them back to Mahet, and they holed up in a hotel for a brief time so that they could try to recuperate. They're badly shelled and shot up. Adam was in pretty good shape, and of course Rook had missed all the festivities, so he was fine. But, well, Extra Crispy was a little shot up, using himself as a shield to try to cover Muhammad. He was able to stop most of the concussion, most of the heat from the missile's explosion, but he did take some shrapnel. The rest of the group was in rough shape, really rough. Of course, Psy Ghost had taken a missile to the ribs and had several broken ribs. She was in bad shape. Sentinel was also badly perforated from shrapnel. Nothing lethal. He was kept upright by Bulwark and some quick medical work. Bulwark is quite good at that now. Bulwark wasn't too terribly injured himself, even though he spent most of his time protecting Muhammad with his force fields. Rather than himself, he still managed to roll with just about everything that came in. So he was decent. So they got to rest. Some food arrived for them. They were suspicious of it. It wasn't until Adam got back and said, oh, no, that's complimentary. That's part of the hospitality of the region, is that if you are a guest, they must feed you. So they fell to the food, and it was good, and that helped to refresh them a bit. Then on their way back to Baghdad, in a new car, because, well, Adam had purchased another car with some of his loose funds that he'd been given for this assignment. They left the old shot-up one behind, went off in a new vehicle. Everything was going fine until they hit a point where some of the Islamic State were fighting with members of the Iraqi security forces across the road. Apparently not having really anything to do with what the group was doing. They just kind of stumbled onto what looked like the Iraqi security had been ambushed. So there was a bit of a firefight. It was an opportunity. If the players wanted to, they could have jumped in and helped. They weren't in any shape to do that, though, so Adam drove off-road, and he bottomed out the vehicle and ripped off the oil pan on some rocky outcroppings on the dry riverbed they were going along. Unfortunately, fairly close to the temporary base that the Iraqi security had set up, which drew the attention of their sentries. And since their vehicle was pretty much not going to go anywhere without that oil very far, they fought back, but non-lethally, and ended up taking a Hummer that was given to Israeli security, well, sold to them, really, by the American forces. So they stole it. Yeah, we'll call it a spade a spade. They stole it. It had a gun on the back, too, that they could shoot. And they drove back into Baghdad. Now, Baghdad has lots of security checkpoints. It is kind of a sealed city these days. Doing a little research. So they went around until they found a checkpoint they were able to sneak their way through. Fortunately, Adam has clearance because he is connected with the American intelligence agencies. And he was able to get them into the city and back to the Baghdadi airport, where he was going to take them to a section screened off so that very important / secretive American operatives and some of the international community can take off, cutting through a lot of red tape and nonsense. Unfortunately for them, somebody was waiting for them. As they got into the airport, they were attacked by, again, familiar black-clad people with a little bit more high-tech stuff than seemed appropriate. And they were attacked. Now, Muhammad dashed off. They weren't exactly entirely sure why he dashed off, but he did. Well, it was under pressure of being attacked again, so the poor guy's been through a lot. And Bulwark threw out a force field to protect him, but left himself exposed, and he got shot down as Adam tried driving the vehicle out of danger. But seeing that both Muhammad and Bulwark were off of the vehicle, he swung around and started using this vehicle to attack their attackers, and they managed to pick them up. Then they got to the airport after basically settling the problem with their initial attackers, and somebody made the mistake of saying, well, at least they didn't come with anything heavier than just that ambush. That's when the tank hit. So they actually had a proper tank that attacked them in the airport while they were looking at the plane that was supposed to take them back. So a fight broke out. Bulwark is in rough shape, again. So Rook tried to get to a nearby Apache helicopter. He tried forcing his way in by punching the windscreen. Pro tip, those things are tough. They're meant to take incoming fire, so no, punching it will not open it up for you. It was locked for a purpose. And he hoped to just take control of the missile system and shoot the tank, but he couldn't do it. So what it ended up taking was a combined effort. At this time, Rook had defeated one person who was sniping them with rockets in the initial encounter, which he also took his eyeball, which was cybernetic. Again, super high technology they somehow have access to. A wrist computer, and he took his rocket launcher. Well, the rocket launcher itself, I believe, was damaged, but he took his explosive rounds, his small explosive shells. And he ran up to the tank and he lobbed one into the barrel of the cannon and then used his repulsor blast power to shove it down the barrel. Didn't do well enough to send it back to detonate the payload, but they kind of obliged him when they shot the gun trying to take out, I believe, the plane that they were supposed to escape on. And instead it detonated in the barrel, which detonated the shell too, and created a crack on the top of the tank. Ruined the cannon too. So Cygos came through and with a power blast, a heck of a power blast I might add, punched through a lot of the armor, leaving this large depression. And Muhammad dashed up and detonated himself underneath the tank, punching up through the armor and almost ripping it in two. The group worked really well together. The tank was further slowed down by Rook having used his density control powers to cause it to sink into the tarmac as just all of a sudden 8 times heavier, which is about 300 or 400 tons, and actually sank into the concrete of the tarmac. So, yeah, the group worked their powers together. I'm sure they missed Bulwark, but, well, bad things happen to good people. And they were then able to go on from there. Start of the next session, which was the 17th or the 15th of January. So the group, sorry, it was the 14th of January. So the group is in the plane, they're ready to take off. I threw a few things to make them nervous, but for the most part, these kind of planes take off and land in Iraq due to their somewhat reliant security on the other governments that have supported the Iraqi government. So in this case, these guys were able to get by cutting through all red tape to get them out of Iraq, which is obviously optimal. They left Adam behind, but they now have Muhammad. Of course, it was Extra Crispy and Ghost and Bulwark in bad shape, Rook and Sentinel. So immediately Rook starts doing first aid to try to help out poor Bulwark. And the first of several ones came forward. Now remember how in an earlier one I said I really believe in the power of luck on dice now? So many ones. So many critical successes this night. It was absolutely incredible. And honestly, the party started relying on that, but we'll get into that. So he brought Bulwark back to consciousness. He wish he hadn't, because he's a hurting puppy. He's got bullet holes in him. He has been roughed up from explosions, and he is hurt. The whole group is hurt except for Rook, who is clean as a daisy. But everybody is in bad shape, and 3 people are at 1 hit point. Full power, so, if a fight comes up, they'll probably go down with a single hit, but they probably aren't going to die for a while because they have all this power. But at the same time, nobody really wants to get into it. And Muhammad is still unconscious, too. They keep him alive, but in the blast and everything, he was in rough shape. Extra Crispy is dinged up, but he's all right. He got winged. So anyhow, they're flying along. I created a little panic by letting them worry about explosives on the plane. They've seen that before. I had them worry about where the plane was headed. They were actually heading to the American Air Force Base in Germany that they are using. And that's a common flyover. I was doing it to create paranoia, but actually it's just protocol. Where they could get into a military transport that could take them straight to the States rather than having to take another plane for a flyover to England and so on. They just decided that England isn't probably the friendliest place to them, as they've had one of their more public setbacks in England. So they're flying them straight back to the States, which was fine. And they arrived, and they got on the plane, and they flew off. It was a nice little opportunity for some role play, which they did. And some of them started working on their training right away. Rook started trying to work on using his gravity control to help him to fly. Now, it's a little bit of a stretch. I mean, gravity control already has a reduced gravity that can make you anti-gravitic, but that's not flight, and that's really what he was shooting for. He wants to be able to keep up with Bulwark and Ghost in terms of being able to fly, which is only going to leave Sentinel behind, and if he ever comes back, Muscle still can't fly. So, at any rate, he started working on that, and he was very smart and didn't try flying in the middle of a plane that was, going really fast. So that was fine. He kept himself anchored. And they had to kind of try to talk to Extra Crispy, who was suffering from a little bit of PTSD after all of this. He is not a combatant by nature. Despite the fact that he can immolate himself and cause incredibly hot fires and stuff, he's just a kid from Colorado who just kind of lucked into this whole thing. So he's dealing, but he's dealing well, and the group helped him out, trying to talk him down a little bit. So plane lands. They are met by a person from the intelligence community. Really didn't identify himself. They took him to some medical treatment in the Air Force Base. It was kind of an impromptu surgery in case anybody needed it. But the doctor said, hey, you guys have all had excellent care. Other than cleaning things up and making sure everything is tight, you guys are good to go. So it helps to have a really good surgeon and somebody who rolled a 1 on his medicine check. What can I say? So, another plane, they finally end up in New York. Greeted by chauffeur in a car. Not actually chauffeur there, but it was remote controlling the car. He got them back to Albany very quickly from the Air Force Base they landed at, and back to the nest. There, they were met by Veronica. Right in the garage, which they saw has been upgraded a bit since they were last there. So over the course of a day, they'd already started making some pretty nice advances and moving in a bunch of stuff at really fast pace. It was a day for them, but of course it felt like a month for us because it was. So they're like, oh, okay, everything's cool. They've installed all these custom LED panels all over so they can watch TV, but they can also set it so it looks like their windows looking outside, even though they're underground in this bunker. They also put up a prefab house above, so when the push came to shove, a lot of stuff fell in place. This place is a lot better as far as a base for the group. So, that being said, Veronica debriefed them fairly quickly. She also greeted Muhammad, welcomed him into the group. Muhammad, they discovered that Muhammad actually can speak English. They didn't need a translator through Adam. He could understand them perfectly, but he never played his hand. They guessed that right. He actually was educated in college and does speak English. But all the same, he's like, yeah, if you can help me to use my powers in a way that benefits people, I'd be happy to. I'll work with you. So he went off. Extra Crispy, did very well. He helped save people. He performed well under fire, and he's well on his way to being another nascent hero. So he walked off. And then Veronica started talking to the group about, what Clayton had been doing, and she warned them that a surge of new gifted are going to come. These are going to be some alpha waivers with powers beyond what the group has so far, and just right off the bat starting off with really high levels of power. So you need to train, you need to be ready for this because it's coming. So the group was allowed to do a training montage. Some of them were easy. Rook just wanted to fly. He took 23 character points and he just dumped it all into flight. So he did nothing for 2 weeks but fly here, there, and everywhere. The cost of flight is really low. It's only 1 point per hour. So he literally practically never touched the ground at all. Got up, flew to the bathroom, flew to the cafeteria, ate while flying, flew upstairs, and he got faster and faster and faster as he was going. Okay, that worked for me. We're moving towards an end game, so I want them to spend the points. I don't want them to have this large pool of bank points because they can't train their abilities. Psyghost's powers are still in development, but she took personal umbrage that the ninja was shirking off of his duties. The ninja has developed one power, invisibility, and he's using it to hide from having to train. He's content that his martial arts powers allows him basically to turn his feeble kicks into devastating strikes. And his evasion, his enhanced defenses, can kind of cover him through a fight. But obviously he's not nearly as good as he could be. He's still physically very unhealthy and unfit. He could definitely benefit, but his personal hindrances are just, he's stubborn and lazy. So, despite the fact that he's got a lot of potential, he's purposefully shirking. Psyghost took this personally. She started picking up life detection powers using her astral senses to sense other people's sparks around them. So she developed that to the point where she actually collared him, he's basically been skulking around raiding the kitchens repeatedly, ate all their moon pies. She nabbed him, and she started forcing him to train. She didn't have the cool roll. This is one of the few times where the dice actually worked not as well as advertised, but I don't think anybody rolled a natural 20 in the whole night. And there were several natural ones. So she kind of got him to start training a little bit, but he is getting, just grotesquely obese and falling back on using his powers to hide and shirk. So the ninja's kind of got some problems going on, and the group really hasn't embraced him at all to any degree. So he's watching other people with powers that aren't as cool as the ninja go off and do cool things, and he's stuck at base and just skulking around. So on the other hand, they talked to Dr. Terrible with his gadget-based ability, and he's been developing things, but mostly he's been pouring his stuff into a mobile headquarters that he has been working on, the tank. And he's been pouring all of his gadgetry and stuff into making it cool. But he does have some interesting things. He's got a couple of micro drones that fly around him. He's got some sort of a gadget emplacement on his shoulder that's got a laser sight and an array of some sort. He's got a pair of oversized pistols at his hip. And he seems to be getting a bit more confident, especially with his abilities and things, despite the fact the others will still roll their eyes at him when he, talks up himself a little too much. He also feels like replacing his lab coat with a lab coat-themed duster makes him even cooler. Jury's out on that one. The group still doesn't really want to touch him all that much. Dorman looks like he has benefited considerably from the experience that he gained working with the group and others. He has learned to do a few new tricks with his dimensional control powers. He hasn't really worked on the range. He's mostly been working on applications, which the party really thinks quite well of him, and they also realize that he's one of the more mature of the group. And Extra Crispy, with his training, has learned a new pyre ability, basically making a huge bonfire around himself, 30 feet around, just a incredible heat, to stop anybody from really getting close to him if he doesn't want them to. So it's an impressive level of power, despite the fact that he still can't project it outward from his body at all. He's still stuck as the center of everything, which does cut down his cost quite a bit. So the group has been, kind of working at a variety of different things together. Some of the major things, Sentinel's worked on some of his powers, trying to beef up some of his skills. He's been hitting the books and working on increasing his smarts. He's been working on his repulsor blast so that he can fire off twin repulsor blasts. So he's got that power down. He also has been working at beefing up his personal force field, realizing that he really needs it to be stronger to resist some of the incoming attacks that he's been facing. Sometimes his defenses are fantastic, but they don't help him so well against area effects. So that's what he's shoring up against, and that's very smart. Bulwark, on the other hand, had a project. He's trying to make new arms for Veronica. And remember when I said the group's dropping ones like nobody's business? Yeah, that happened. I think he rolled 3 1s in a row. It's a nice counterpoint to Logan rolling 3 20s on his attacks in the D&D game, because he just perfect. Okay, now you can install it. Perfect. So not only did he make arms that are structurally superior in terms of reflexiveness, in terms of strength, in terms of durability, he also perfectly anchored them so that she won't reject them, and she almost immediately was able to move them with the same efficiency as her old arms. Natural 1, what do you do, right? He rolled brilliantly. And I don't think they, aside from a couple of cool tests, I don't think they missed any rolls at all. So he made these awesome arms for her. So now she's got great arms. And they're stronger than she was before. She's very happy with them. And they're not huge, big gorilla arms either. They kind of fit appropriately for her body, but they're still very strong and very powerful. So he did really good there. Then he went on with doing more work and, again, developing his powers a little bit more. So all told, they had a chance to use up some of those points. Bulwark had fewer points than anybody else because he'd spent some of them already. So also there were a few impromptu awards. We gave a bonus award for Rook's player who has been our chronicler, and he writes notes and everything and keeps track of things. So he often will do a recap for us at the beginning, which is great. And also I gave some bonus points to the player of Sentinel, who did a fantastic job remembering everything after almost a month of not playing. He remembered the details of the final fight and provided it, stepped in and knocked it out of the park, giving play-by-play on everything that happened in a way I couldn't match by any stretch of the imagination. So he got a few bonus points too. So it's good to see people stepping up in those roles. I'm very, very happy with that when that happens. And it happens more often than some people give themselves credit for. So it's good to see. I'm glad they're able to do those kind of things. So realistically, we kind of set everything in motion so that the next session we'll be able to get into the action. Their next mission, they were told that the black-suited folks are actually 3 separate groups that they're set to have problems with. One of them is called Code Knight, and they are trying, they think that they are going to save the world by ruling it, but they want to save the world against all the trouble that's going to happen with the gifted. And somehow they've got an inside that gives them high advanced technology, and they're using it to try to do their things. The biggest problem that they have is a group called Smash. Smash just wants to control everything. They want to clamp down on the gifted. They're the ones that they've been fighting with so far. And they have advanced technology and things like that. But they're kind of the dumb brute of the lot. They have a lot of power. They have a lot of people. But they don't have the kind of guile, leadership, or subtlety that the other groups have. So the next group, they're actually going to be moving in action against Smash. The last group are actually the bloodlines of many of the criminal organizations throughout the world, or oligarchs, the ones who are the movers and shakers, and they bought in through back doors, and they know what Smash is doing, and they manipulate, they wheedle. They don't go with excessive force, they go with surgical precision to try to eventually rule the world in their own image as well. But they don't work with the other two. So that's fractured. It's a fractured front they're dealing with. Their next adventure that they're going to be doing, their mission, is going to be attacking Smash's source of advanced technology. Smash has taken over a small section of the former Soviet state of Georgia and created their own little fiefdom, which has an ironclad military presence, again suppressing the people. That they've been used to that before. And they are determined to hold on to this territory and use it as a base of operations that they can funnel all of this gear and things from. They can build up installations so that they can have the kind of computing systems and headquarters that they can manage operations throughout the world. The group is being sent in to bust that up. Now, they know where the enemy are, and they know some of the enemy's capabilities. One of the things that Smash is known for is battle-suited goons. They have powered armor, which is a fun thing to have to deal with, and the group is, of course, there to have to try to deal with it. Their mission is going to be to go in, raise hell, cause problems, take as much as they can as far as hard material if they can. They're going to have limited opportunities for that, of course. It's also going to be to take any kind of intel they can, blueprints, plans, anything that they can store. And they have the means to do that. And also to try to cut off the head of the dragon if they can. Eliminate their source of all of this advanced technology, and then they just become a bunch of goons that can be swept out by the rest of the international community, who doesn't obviously like having this paramilitary force operating and causing these kind of problems. It's just that nobody can do anything about it right now. But the group can, and that'll be their mission. Now, helping out the group, of course, is the fact that they had a little bit of time to prepare, and they got to spend some of their invention points. So, for instance, going on with his theme, Bulwark spent his inventing points on creating a "I touch you, I heal you" for a lot of damage. So he can auto surgeon somebody very quickly. The rest of the group got to play around with the inventing rules a little bit too, which is cool. The flip side also to that is not only do they have their powers amplified in their own, they also got uniforms again. They got super suits. It turns out that the P. Diddy brand of supers, who's been working on the fashion forward motion for all of these new gifted that have been popping up, and there are now hundreds of gifted around the world. They've been going forward and offering to back them, basically, and give them products so that they can, show off the brand and look cool doing it. And what starving superhero isn't going to say, wow, you're giving me a suit of armored suit that I can be my own individual self? And, the government is even offering subtly to some of these people the opportunity to kind of have an incognito legal status, so that they have an identity that is their super identity, and they can keep their other identity as private for obvious reasons that anybody who's ever picked up a comic could understand. So the group now has their cool armor back, and this armor is even cooler. The enhancement has actually been picked up for their personal defense. They now have a fully sealed suit if they choose to use the helmet and gloves that come with it. It is enhanced with new technologies that have been developed since their first time with Lord Warbridge. So, yeah, all things considered, the players have a lot of things going forward, going their way. Will they be able to put it all together? we'll see. They were also allowed to pick one other team member from the different gifted who are in base. Their choices were, from the ones who are there, Extra Crispy, the Ninja, although he was discouraged because, well, he's probably not ready for missions, quite honestly, Dr. Terrible, Doorman. They also could have taken two of the new gifted who showed up, one which is named Shaman. He could turn into animals, which Veronica is over the moon about because animals are great for surveillance. And it's a kind of an operative's dream come true to be able to hide in plain sight as a dog or a cat. Nobody thinks about things like that. And if it comes to a fight, he can turn into a grizzly bear or a rhino or something and get into a fight. The other one, though, is Fantasyland, and Fantasyland's a little young for those kind of operations. He's a kid who can basically warp reality around him to fit a theme that he's thinking about. And he's a huge medieval buff. He's a 16-year-old kid who can turn an area 1,000 yards around him and basically warp the nature of everything so that it appears to be pseudo-medieval. Unfortunately, he's not very gifted in history, so it's what he's seen in movies. But he can, for instance, turn an entire room into a scene from a Renaissance fair, which he's done. When he first met Bulwark, he was like, oh, hero worship, because he was the first person to show up in front of YouTube and go, hey, I'm gifted. This is what this means. So he really thinks a great deal of Takeshi. So when he saw him, he thought, oh, he's Japanese. So he created the ready room, which is all set up with a banquet, and what he thought of was authentic Japanese pagoda with Chinese food on it, but it's all American Chinese, so it's really crass, and it's like, your sweet and sour chicken and fortune cookies and stuff like that really aren't honestly Chinese or Japanese. So he doesn't have much of a clue. He's got a very interesting power, but at the same time, while it changes everything's nature, it doesn't change how they are. So if you had this effect on a police officer and you put him in he'd still be a guard in chainmail with a crossbow, for instance. So he still wouldn't change his idea, his personality. It would just fit the genre, and so it could be a very powerful ability, but at the moment it's kind of just more of a novelty. They're trying to figure out ways of using it. It's basically how it comes down. So, yeah, it's they chose Doorman. He's got some really cool powers. His ability to create gateways that'll help the whole group is a plus. He's also the most mature of the group, and that's a big issue with some like Dr. Terrible and the Ninja. He's been working on his powers, and he should be an asset to the group when they set off on this kind of mission. So, everything looks like it's going well. We picked up like we never left off. The group has had a real spate of luck, and I don't think it all falls down to our new Happy Die. But they didn't have to use the bad side at all. It was all smiles as far as the group was concerned. Will that continue on to next time? I don't know. We'll see. But that's why we roll the dice and play the game. Till then, I'm Rob. This has been my State of the Dungeon address. Thank you for joining me, and until next time when I crawl in front of this camera and do one of these videos, farewell and game on.